What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and we're back for another episode of Poker Hands. Today we're going to be taking a look at a cash game hand played between Viffer and Dwan on Poker After Dark. Let's jump into the action.
Not the best part of the deck for Viffer. Slightly better for Dwan, who makes the call.
Our hand begins three-handed with an $800 big blind, with David P on the button with 9-2 of hearts. He likes to open it up to 2,500 or slightly over 3 big blinds, which is definitely a fine raise size, particularly if there's an ante, which I believe there is. Now, 9-2 suited certainly is a little bit more loose, and in some very strong lineups, you might want to consider folding it. But in general, and particularly as you get deeper, this is a fine raise. Eliezer gets out of the way in the small blind, and it's over to Dwan in the big. He has 9-6 suited and definitely should play his hand. The question is, should he call or raise? Now, both definitely have merit, but I think I'm a fan of call. If you 3-bet, it plays a little bit badly out of position here, and additionally, if you get 4-bet, you're going to have to fold. Instead, calling lets you immediately try to realize some equity and play some post-flop. Tom calls, and let's take a flop.
Open ender for Durrrr, heart draw for Viff.
4,000.
Pete bets $4,000. Doesn't want to make any eye contact with Tom. Staring down intently.
Raise 10,200 more.
Dwan check raises 10-2 more. Pete looking visibly irritated by that, but makes the call.
The flop comes King 8-7, and we've got two regular William Kassoufs here with everyone having 9 high. However, despite the fact they have 9 high, both players pick up a pretty serious piece. Tom Dwan has an open ender, and David Pete has a flush draw. So both 9 high is actually fairly strong, despite having very little showdown value. Dwan checks, as he should with all of his hands, and now David elects to bet. This is certainly a good hand to bet, and I'm actually having flashbacks to another hand with David Pete with 9-2. But unlike that hand, this is a very good bet. You have equity, so if they call, you can improve to win. If they check raise, you can call and play some turns. And if they fold, you win with a hand that likely was behind in showdown value. So this is a very standard bet, and I like it from David Pete. Now over to Dwan, and he has a couple of options. He can either, sort of like pre-flop, call or raise. Now, call is definitely okay, and on average, probably the better play. But you certainly want to mix in some raises here on the flop. The thing is, if you raise all of your straight draws on King 8-7, you're just going to bluff too much. You can have open enders like 6-5, 9-6, and 10-9, but you can also have tons of gut shots here like 5-4, or 6-4, or 9-5, or 10-6, etc. So there's a lot of straight draws here, and if you just check raise on the flop because you have a straight draw, you're going to be way over bluffing because you don't have that many good hands. That means that I think I like mainly calling here, but maybe mixing in a raise from time to time. Well, for Dwan, this happens to be one of those times, and he raises it up. Back over to Viffer here, and now he has a decision to make with his 9 high flush draw. He can call and look to play turns, or he can 3-bet the flop. In general, I prefer to call, because if you 3-bet the flop, the problem with that is only a few hands are really strong enough to make that move. If you have a set or maybe top 2, it could be fine, but if you have those hands that are that strong, your opponent is very likely bluffing. So for that reason, I like the call, and we take the turn.
Ace changes nothing. Both players have the same hand right now. 9 high plus the board. Dwan puts out a second shell, almost 24 grand. Undeterred by Viffer's flop call.
All in.
And Viffer moves all in.
The turn is an offsuit ace, so neither player improves. However, if we take a step back and think about this, this is a much better card for Viffer than it is for Dwan. I mean, think about the kinds of hands Dwan might check raise on the flop. Sure, some bluffs like 9-6, but if he has a good hand, it's going to be a hand like King 8, King 7, maybe 8-7 or a set, and that ace will never hit him. Over to Viffer, it hits him quite a lot. He can have a hand like Ace-King, he can have a hand like Aces, so there's definitely some hands that Viffer has that have been proven to be very strong here that Dwan will never have. For this reason, I don't mind in Dwan's shoes mostly checking. Because the thing is, if you try and bluff here too much, your opponent can start to put you in really tough spots by electing to raise. You don't really have hands that strong anymore, and your opponent has some hands that you can't really beat. So checking a lot to protect your range makes some sense. That said, your flop range is polarized. You have some good hands and some bluffs, so continuing to barrel also makes more sense. I think I'd like to see Dwan be more aggressive on turns that are bricks like a 3 or a 4 or a 2, or maybe even a card like a 6 or a 5 where some of his draws get there. Then on a turn ace, where he's still representing that he has King 8, King 7 mainly, and now those hands have become a lot weaker. Well, Dwan elects to bet, and now it's on Viffer. He has to decide what he wants to do. The problem now for him is that his hand, while still a reasonable draw, is actually quite weak. You're only going to improve on the river on, 18% of rivers you're going to have a flush, and then about 12% you're going to have some pair that you really can't play. And the problem is 2 of those flush outs actually pair the board, and particularly if it's a king, you're not exactly happy with your flush. So he has a bit of a predicament. I think that all options here are fine, and I know, let's actually just take a moment to say this really quick. In some recent videos, I've been saying more people have multiple options, and in the comments, some people have said, I really hate when you say that, Doug, like, good player, man, fold, call, array is cool. But the thing about poker is a lot of times spots are close, and this turn spot for Viffer is actually really close between all the options. Fold is probably a little too timid, but call is debatably slightly losing because you're not getting quite the direct odds. Unless you think either Dwan will give up a lot and you can win with air, or Dwan's going to pay you off a lot and you can get paid for a large bet, you're not getting the odds to call this turn bet. So call might not quite be winning, and if that's true, it has to be fold or raise. Fold's a bit tight, but does make some sense, and particularly against tighter players, I might like to see that option. Now, raise is definitely the boss status move. You can have ace-king, you can have all of the sets, so that makes a lot of sense, and then mix in some value bets where you don't want to see your opponent get there on the river. However, that said, you can use a lot of other hands here instead of 9-2 suited to make this move. A hand like, a combo draw, flush draw, straight draw could be a better raise. A hand like 6-4 of hearts. That said, maybe you want to argue that that hand can call, and so this makes it a better bluff. I can see either thing making sense to me, and I don't mind the idea of raising, particularly in this exact spot, because the ace helps Viffer so much. Well, Viffer decides to boss it up and go all in here on the turn, and the action's over to Dwan. I wonder what he does with 9 high here. Can he make the call?
And Viffer moves all in. If you thought Dwan's bet was gutsy, try Viffer's shove on for size.
Nice, man.
I guess some people just don't have the balls to call with 9 high. Thank you for joining us here today, and if you're interested in learning more about poker, you can either check out the rest of the Poker Hand series or head over to upswingpoker.com to learn more about how to play correct poker.